Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it.
I was sat across the table from a founder just a few months ago, and now he had a 7-figure business, he had a great team, and he'd spent the last 25 years of working in his business, blood, sweat, and tears, right? But within 20 minutes after looking under the hood of his business, I had to tell him this realization, which is that his business was worthless. And it's not because he didn't have great revenue, it's because he was the business. And the worst part is that he was completely aware of the situation, but was stuck. He kept on telling himself the 5 lies that every founder tells themselves before they try to sell. Now, today, I'm going to do a deep dive and walk you through these 5 lies. And even if one of them sounds familiar to you guys, you've got work to do before any other exit. So first of all, thanks so much for listening to today's Business Strategist show with myself, Adam Strong. You know, today I wanted to share this opportunity because there are so many conversations that I have with business founders and CEOs and business owners alike that are looking to sell and exit their business. And the same 5 lies keep coming up. So I wanted to kind of share those 5 lies. So let's get into this, right? So lie number 1, which is our revenue isn't tied to me. So what's really interesting about this is that founders insist that revenue comes from a product, it comes from a service, it comes from the brand, but not from them personally. They point out the P&L, they point out the numbers of what the business generates. But the truth is that if your top 5 clients would only take a call from you and not anybody else in your team, then the revenue is tied to you. Okay. Now, if you're the one that's closing the big deals, renewing key accounts, subscription, retainers, whatever it is, or stepping in when a client threatens to leave, you are the revenue engine. And a buyer sees that instantly. And straight away, they're thinking, how can I get a discount? Right. So I use what we call the founder revenue test. Now, what I'd like you to do, and there's a real great exercise that I do with a lot of my clients, is I want you to go through all your top 10 accounts or clients and ask honestly, who owns that relationship? Is it you or is it your team? Now, if your name comes up more than twice, you have what we call a founder-dependent revenue model, okay? Now, buyers will discount your valuation for every relationship that doesn't transfer. Super important. Now, here's a really interesting part. I was actually speaking with a lady actually, who's a founder of a legal firm. And what's really interesting is that, you know, she's very successful. Like on paper, she looks super successful. And then she was thinking about obviously selling the business. But when the buyer dug into the due diligence process, what they discovered is that 70 to 75% of that revenue was tied to the founder's key relationships. Now, what happens to that deal? You'll probably know what that looks like. But if revenue that's tied to you isn't reoccurring income, if it's not done through regular cash flow that's coming through, it's your reputation and it's your revenue. And reputation doesn't transfer into an asset. You need to build a sales system. You need to build a client acquisition system that generates revenue whether you're in the room or not in the room. This particular founder didn't. And she had an amazing team. Like, they were praised for her. But unfortunately, you know, if she went on holiday, if she was sick, the business or the majority of the revenue was completely dependent on her. Now, you can imagine the amount of weight on her shoulders when it comes to running a 7-figure business. It's humongous, right? So that is lie number 1. Line number two, which is again a really interesting one. Line number two is my team can handle it. They just need me for the big decisions. That's really interesting because when I speak to a lot of founders that have delegated activities or whatever it is, what they've done is they've really delegated tasks, yeah, whatever that looks like, but not authority. And I think that's really important. Now, if you've got a team who can't make a £10,000 decision without you, without calling you or harassing you, you haven't built a leadership team. You need to have a management team that's going to be able to take the heavy weight. Now, you may have a right hand man or a right hand woman, okay, that's able to then take care of some of those relationships. Otherwise, all you're doing is you're just building a team that's completely codependent on you, but all they're doing is they're just waiting for instructions. That's not running a team, okay? That's running control. So I think the real difference between, delegation and what I call operational autonomy is that the test isn't can someone do the work? It's, can they make decisions without you? Like if the shit hits the fan or if there's a crisis, and if the business, if you went away for 90 days, can the business continue to grow? That's a big core question. I use this as what's really interesting. We use a very simple test called the 90-day vanish test. And I also kind of, use different analogies, which is how bust proof is your business? If you could disappear for 90 days with zero contact with your business, would it survive? Would it continue to thrive? If the answer is no, then guess what? You're not ready to sell. Businesses that have a strong management team, a strong second in command of that leadership will carry a higher multiple when it comes to that, because ultimately the risk to the buyer drops dramatically. And I've seen this all the time. That's line number two. So
hey guys, just wanted to chime in here. Just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to this week's Business Strategist Show. If you've enjoyed today's episode or any past episodes, please do me a favor, head over to Apple or Spotify and leave a 1 or a 5-star review. Listen, we get feedback from people all over the world. We can only improve the shows if we get feedback from our listeners. So listen, head over to those platforms right now. Be extremely grateful. Thank you so much. Back to the show.
Line number three is the systems are all in my head. I'll document everything before we sell. Now, what's really fascinating about that, a lot of founders that I speak to and have a lot of conversations with, is that they believe that they'll create the SOPs, some playbooks, some Loom videos or processes documents when the time comes round to it. But ultimately, if your business knowledge lives in here, it isn't an asset, it's a complete liability. I go back to the point that I made is how bulletproof, how bust-proof is your business? Because ultimately, buyers pay for what I call transferable systems, not knowledge locked inside here, which is really, really, really important. So the real difference between a business and a practice, the practice dies when the practitioner leaves effectively. A business runs on systems and anyone can run it. Any competent person can follow the instructions. And I always use this as an analogy is in terms of writing out your SOPs is an instruction manual. How is it that you want the business to run if you're not there? Okay. And do they know it? So let me give an example. When it comes to things like client onboarding, and I had a great call with a client recently, actually, and I said, so who closes your sales? Who onboards your clients and stuff? And they're like, me. And so here's the thing, like all of this, like when it comes to deciding on pricing, when it comes to negotiation, when it comes to onboarding, when it comes to sales process, when it comes to negotiation with your suppliers, all of these things, if it just requires you as the business owner or the founder, then that is a big red flag in the due diligence process. So again, start documenting now, not for further on down the line. Record Loom videos. And there's some great tools. Loom videos, you've got Canva, you've got Notion, but build a simple operations manual. So if someone's going into your business, they know how you want the business to run, okay? The founder who does this 18 months before your business comes on the market will add between 15 and 30% of valuation, because what you've done is you de-risked the transitional period between someone that comes in and buys it, and you wouldn't need to be in that transitional phase for so long. So this is what actually we do as part of our, what we call our diagnostics, our exit readiness diagnostics. And you can also do the scorecard as well, the exit ready scorecard, which is featured in my LinkedIn profile. But you can also check that out in the show description notes below. Anyway, interestingly enough, this is a really good one. Line number 4, which is, no one knows the industry like I do. That's our competitive advantage. Now, I hear this all the time, especially in professional services, and the founders' knowledge, expertise, relationships generally are the moat of the business. And they generally believe their irreplaceability is actually a strength. It's not. If your competitive advantage walks out the door with you do, then it's not really a competitive advantage, really, is it? It's really what I call a vulnerability. You're leaving the business vulnerable, and every buyer is going to see that. So what are real competitive advantages? Well, we actually talked about this on a couple of shows before. So we had a great show with Mr. Les Evans, talk about how to create an uncopyable business. Just something that I picked up from that podcast, which is, what can you say or do that no one in your industry can do? And what's really interesting about this is I spoke about this with a client of mine who's in legal services, and she literally couldn't answer the question. Just like, I literally do not know the answer to that question. And the thing is that you're making it very difficult for clients to choose you because they don't know how to differentiate you from. But also, the hard question is if you were hit by a bus tomorrow, why would your 3 biggest clients stay? Would your team know what to do on a Monday morning? Would your pipeline continue to churn out? So your goal isn't to make yourself unnecessary in the business or redundant. It's to make yourself optional. Line number 5, which again is quite comical, and I hear this all the time because business exits mean different things to different people. You know, there are 3 main stages to exit in a business. You've got exit from operations, you've got scaling and streamlining, and you've also got stage number 3, which is actually getting the business ready to sell for an amount of money. Now, the biggest lie that most founders I hear is exit planning. We'll do that once we decide that we're going to sell. But the truth is that the best exits are the ones where the founder starts to prepare 2 to 3 years before they even decide to sell. This is like getting your house in order, ready to sell, okay? Exit readiness isn't like a special event. It's a way of running your business. Now, even if you decide that you aren't going to exit your business in the next 2, 3, 4 years, but I go back to the point of optionality. What if you had the option? What if you could focus on the optionality of being able to exit if you wanted to? And that's what really, really key. A business that is ready to sell is also a business that is most likely more profitable, less stressful, and far much more enjoyable to run. I've seen so many business owners that have been doing it for such a long period of time, and you can see that they've lost their passion. You can see that they've lost, their true happiness, etc. But the exit ready business is simply a better business. It's, it's much more orchestrated. It doesn't depend on you. And you know what? You might prepare to sell it, but then actually further on down the line, you may just decide to keep it, and that's okay. But now you're keeping a machine, not a trap, and that's important. So all these lies that I have highlighted are all part of the same root cause in a nutshell. The founder has the business around themselves instead of building the business to outlast themselves. And I think that's really, really important. Now, every founder that I've worked with has built what I call a truly sellable business. And they've told me things like, oh, I wish I'd done this 5 years ago. I wish I did this many years ago. Like, not because they wanted to sell, in five years ago, but because the business has become so much more better. It's much more streamlined. It's easier to manage, and they've stopped being the bottleneck. They've stopped basically building a business that is completely codependent on them. And it's a bit like, nursery. Yeah. You don't want to, you don't want to build a team. You don't want to build a business that is completely codependent on you. That's not a sellable business. So let's recap what the 5 lies are. The lie number 1 is, our revenue isn't tied to me. So if your top clients will only take your call, that revenue doesn't transfer, right? So basically, you own the key relationships, you own the revenue channels, etc. And I've given you a great example of a conversation that I had with a legal firm just a few months ago. Line number 2 was, my team can handle it. Now, what I mean by that is not if they can't make decisions without you. Delegation is not just about delegating activities. It's about giving responsibility. It's about giving people accountability for their own actions. That's exactly what it is, okay? Line number 3, I'll document everything before we sell, which is a false belief system. If it's in your head, it's not an asset. I go back to the analogy of, is your business bust proof? Because ultimately, if it's in here, it's a vulnerability. And that's where, angel investors, venture capitalists, private equity firms, they will look for ways in which they can reduce that multiple, any way, shape, or form. Number 4, my expertise is our competitive advantage. Everybody says that. It doesn't matter who says that, but I can guarantee you that everybody is saying that they are professional, they're qualified, we have 25 years of experience, blah, blah, blah. Now, if that leaves with you, it's a liability. And I shared about the importance of, what can you say or do that no one in your industry can? So that's really, really important. And line number 5, which is, I'll start preparing when I'm ready. The best time, but actually what I've come to found is I found that the best time was actually 2 to 3 years prior to exiting. The best time was 2 years ago. The second best time is this week, ladies and gentlemen. So if any of those hit home for you, do me a favor, go and take the exit readiness assessment, which is in the show description notes. And I believe it's called exit2ready.scoreapp.com. That's exit2ready.scoreapp.com. And the link is in the show description notes. It will only take 2 or 3 minutes of your time, but it'll show you exactly where the gaps are in your business. Now, if you think that that's going to be if you believe that that's going to provide some value to you, and you would find it useful, share it with somebody else, right? Because my big goal is to help more founders to be able to exit from their business. So that's from me. Thank you so much for listening to today's Business Strategist show. Hopefully it's given you a little bit more of giving you an epiphany, giving you a realization. Hopefully it's challenged some of the false belief systems that you have. And hopefully it's given you some examples that may relate back to you. Anyway, from me, Adam Strong, so take care and we'll speak to you soon. Cheers now. Bye-bye.